Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm filming a first trimester video. I'm going to get into all my symptoms and all the things that has been going on for me during my first trimester with my very first pregnancy. In Australia, the first trimester goes until 12 weeks, but I'll include the extra 2 weeks because I know in some countries they count it until 14 weeks. So I'm currently 15 weeks pregnant and I'll show you the bump before I forget. So I still feel like I just look bloated, but you can definitely see there's a little bump happening. Okay, so let's jump right into it. I also think I need to preface my symptoms by saying, if you haven't watched my adenomyosis video, I'll link it down below, but I think some of my early symptoms were contributed by the fact that I have adenomyosis. If you don't know what that is, I'll give you a quick little rundown. Adenomyosis is where endometrial-like tissue invades the uterus and sort of like grows inside the lining of the uterus, and over time it degrades your uterus, making it almost impossible to conceive children once it gets to a certain point. So yeah, it's not a very nice condition to have. It's also very painful during your times of the month. Okay, so after conception, I had a lot of cramping. I don't think this is typically normal for most people, but I did have a lot of cramping. Sorry if I keep looking down, I wrote everything down in my phone so that I wouldn't forget. The cramping was so bad, I found it really hard to sit up straight in a chair. Like, it felt like there was too much pressure on my uterus just sitting upright. It was very strange and uncomfortable. Also, before I got a positive pregnancy test, I had some pregnancy-like symptoms. I had a tiny little bit of nausea. It was very small compared to what I've experienced now. I was also needing to pee really frequently, so I was going to the toilet constantly and not a lot was coming out, but I just had that urge. I also had a lot of like pulsing, fluttering, cramping feeling around my ovaries and in my uterus, which was interesting and strange. It made me feel like I could feel the baby implanting in my uterus. Like, I'm not sure if that's even possible, if you can feel it or not, but it sort of made me feel like I was feeling those things. I might not have been, maybe it was just cramping because of the adenomyosis and the trying for the baby. Once we finally got our positive pregnancy test, I was still having the frequency of needing to go pee. I still had the cramping, pulsing, fluttering feeling in my uterus. And because of the cramping, I was really scared to check any of my period tracker apps or my Daisy. I didn't want to know when my period was due. Like, I didn't want to jinx it. It was like I didn't want to put that date of when my next period would be in my brain in case I somehow made it happen. I was just so hopeful that this pregnancy would stick and that I wouldn't have a period or, you know, something worse. That I just didn't want to know. I did not want to know the date of my next period. I just wanted to go on as if I would never have a period again, kind of thing. I also started to crave like salty vegetable things, so like vegetable stock dishes like risotto, and we made like this vegetable noodle with tofu dish, and I was just craving those so much. Ryan was making me so many like vegetable stock meals. It was delicious. Those were all my early symptoms. Obviously I didn't track the weeks for those ones because they all sort of were like conception based weeks, but I did start tracking my symptoms from week 4. So I'll get into those now. So from week 4, I had a stronger sense of smell. I could smell like mold in our bathroom, and that was like gross. We had to clean it. And I could smell like when the corgis were more stinky than usual, and just like food smells as well were much more pungent for me. It was like I had a fresh new nose, like straight out of the packet. Like, it was working too well. I also started getting some lower back cramps. I'm not sure why exactly. That could be due to adenomyosis as well. I'll read what I wrote about it because I'm not remembering exactly. Started getting more cramps, not nearly as bad as period cramps, some in the lower back and some in the stomach. It was easier to sit up in my desk chair than it was at the start, but could only really do it for 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes got a sharper pain, would cramp more if I played around / ran around with the dogs or walked them / made dinner. So like standing up for a long period of time. It was consistent low-grade pain. It kind of felt like my uterus was stretching and that something was in my uterus. Obviously that makes sense, like something was in my uterus. But it was scary at the time because I didn't know like what these cramps meant, if they would get worse. I even talked to my doctor about it. For the most part, I just ignored the cramps. I was a bit concerned about them, obviously. But it wasn't until I then, during my 4th week, had some droplets of blood in my undies that I freaked out. Now, it wasn't a lot of blood, it was just like a few droplets. So I wrote, on the 1st of October, woke up to some droplets of blood in my undies. Freaked out and went to see the doctor. But that morning I also took another pregnancy test and I had an even stronger line than before, which was reassuring. Also, before the doctor, I finally checked on my Daisy app, which if you don't know, it's like a temperature tracker and it can also show you when you're pregnant, which is very handy. I checked on my Daisy to help me learn what was going on. It gave me relief as all the dots were still a high temperature. I saw the doctor and she said it could be hormones or a ruptured blood vessel. She didn't give me a lot of peace of mind though and wanted me to know about miscarriage and what the signs are and what to do if it was happening to me. I wrote, I found her nice, but hearing that wasn't helpful. I remember it really wasn't helpful. I was like, can we just talk about the positive things and not like if it could be miscarriage? Oh, I remember what happened now. Before I got the spotting, the blood spotting, a few days before that I saw my doctor and I told her about my cramping and everything, and she had me do a HCG level test just to like confirm pregnancy. And then when I had my second doctor's appointment after I had the spotting and the bleeding, they told me my result was 75, which was good from the previous day, and then they gave me another blood test to do that day. So the result for that one, my previous one was on the 28th of October and it was 75, and then a few days later on the 1st of October I had one and it was 411, which was a good result and my doctors were happy with that. Because with the HCG level you kind of want it to be like doubling every 24 to 48 hours. Maybe check that, double check that. I'm not sure if that's completely correct, but that's from my memory at least. And then 4 days after that, on the 5th of October, I had another HCG level test and it was 1977. So that was also very good and very reassuring. And I also found it very helpful that my doctors took my symptoms seriously and they were reassuring me and having me do these blood tests to make sure everything was tracking correctly. Okay, let's move on to week 5. I found that my boobs were getting bigger and quite sore, and I also found that my left boob grew quicker than my right boobs. And I wrote down as well a day or 2 after the right side caught up, so good job. I had that slight bit of nausea at the very start and then it went away. And then in week 5 it says that I didn't have any nausea, which is good because let me tell you, it's coming. I was also having cramping, but it was more on and off and it was getting better. Also during week 5 I had an ultrasound just to check if the pregnancy was in my uterus, because my doctors were still quite concerned that I was having cramping and the spotting that had occurred. So they're just checking to make sure it wasn't ectopic, which is where the embryo implants in your fallopian tubes. That can be quite life-threatening for the mum because as it grows it kind of explodes your fallopian tube and you can die of shock and bleeding out and things like that. So after that ultrasound I was relieved and I was happy and I was like, everything's going well, and I just attributed the cramping to my adenomyosis and maybe my uterus was just like, you know, having a harder time adjusting to being pregnant, and that's just kind of what I assumed was happening with the cramping. I also checked my adenomyosis support group and I found that a lot of other women who have adenomyosis found that they were initially cramping from conception to a few weeks, sometimes even longer with their adeno. Then I didn't get to be relieved for very long because the very next day I found some light pink spotting and I went back to the doctors and they had me do some more HCG blood level tests, and that was 17,187 on the 12th of October, approximately 25 days post-ovulation. And that post-ovulation is on my count, which is actually 3 days more than what the doctors have said my ovulation date is. I think now I understand why I had that spotting initially. It could have been implantation, and also the spotting after the ultrasound I think was just that my cervix was a little bit more tender or more prone to bleeding than other people's cervixes maybe. I don't think it was anything sinister. Other symptoms I had during week 5 was slight bleeding of the gums, and I also had some food poisoning, which really kicked into gear my nausea and morning sickness. Okay, now we're on to week 6. Week 6 was just a week for my nausea and morning sickness to really kick into gear. All of those vegetable stock dishes that Ryan was making, I did not want them anymore. I didn't really want anything, but I had like 0 cravings. I was just feeling so sick. I only wanted plain and dry dinner things like nachos. Also, my morning sickness would it would start in the morning and it would just get worse and worse and worse throughout the day until nighttime, where I was just, you know, absolutely gone. It would be a hit or miss if I would vomit or not. I was trying to keep fit and continue doing my yoga and things like that, and I remember this week I was trying to do my yoga and I was so nauseous, and after I finished my yoga I was just like on the bed like, oh. All the motion from the yoga was just too much for me. I also wrote that I had a few days without cramps or mild cramps in the evening and a tiny bit of spotting again. It was like just a small amount and it was brown, which was good. I also just contributed that spotting to just leftover from the previous ultrasound that I had that might have like upset my cervix a little bit. Then I finally did my first vomit, and luckily during that day I had gone to my doctor's and I was telling her my symptoms, and she actually prescribed me some anti-nausea medication. The one I was on was Maxilon. I'm not sure if you guys have it in your country, and so I had that after I vomited. I also had another HCG level test, and I'll tell you what that result was. It was 56,579, and the doctor that gave me that result was like, oh, you have such juicy HCG levels, do twins run in your family? And I was like then secretly hoping I was having twins. And yeah, her saying that also made me feel good because it meant that my hormones were keeping up to date and being very nice and progressive, and meaning that the pregnancy had a strong hold on me. Okay, now we're into week 7. So during week 7 I started to feel like my joints were maybe more relaxed when I slept, and they kind of felt stiff and like they were, I don't know, just sort of stretching out of their sockets a little bit when I was sleeping. Like my knees would feel really strange. I don't know how else better to describe it, but it just sort of felt like I just sort of melted into the bed a bit more, but not in a comfortable way. My sense of smell was also increasing even more. I also started vomiting a lot this week. It seemed like it was every second day, and because of that I increased my nausea tablets to twice a day instead of once a day. My cramps were pretty much gone now, but I started feeling a spasming in my uterus, which was kind of strange. It kind of felt like a buzzing or a spasming. It wasn't painful, it was just a strange feeling. In my notes I described it like a little bee trapped in my uterus? Question mark. I also wrote, finally ate an ice cream, vegan Magnum, and was so happy on the 26th of October. First sweet food in 3-ish weeks. Then at the end of that week, I pushed myself a little bit. I did a photo shoot with my dogs, and I was kind of like on the ground taking photos of them because they're corgis. They're like so short off the ground, but they're really long in their body. And after that I had some more cramping in my uterus, so that kind of stressed me out because I had just pretty much gotten over all the cramps and I just had that weird buzzing feeling, and then doing that made the cramps come back the next day, which I wasn't happy about, and I made sure after that not to push myself too much. So the next few weeks are basically just nausea weeks. I continued to feel sick in week 8. I started also noticing a trend Oily food really set me off, so if I ate anything oily, I would feel very nauseous. We went out to dinner to a Japanese place and I had some gyozas and they were very oily, and after eating those I felt so sick. Also, after eating those oily gyozas, I felt so sick the whole of the next day and I vomited that night. I also noticed that my taste buds changed. I used to put like so much pepper and like not as much salt, but just so much pepper on my toast with avocado and tomato. Eating pepper and stuff, it was just too spicy for me. Like my tummy couldn't handle it, my taste buds couldn't handle it. It's almost like I have a new digestive system. Okay, so now we're on to week 9. So week 9, we finally got to tell Ryan's family about the baby. It was very exciting. I also wrote down in my notes that I've been having pretty good skin during this pregnancy. Normally I would get like a lot of pimples on my cheeks, some big cystic acne ones, and then mainly just smaller ones. But during this pregnancy I've hardly had any, and definitely not any cystic acne ones, or very few. I was also finding that just the thought of any food was disgusting to me, and it would make me feel instantly nauseous thinking about any food. Like Ryan would be like, oh, what do you want to eat for dinner? Maybe this? And I would be like like no, please. He'd be like, let's get a snack, we'll have this, and I'm like, ugh. like just the thought of like imagining any food and imagining eating it made me feel so disgusting. Okay, now on to week 10. As you can see, it's still nausea related. So because my nausea got so bad in the night time, I started finding that when I brushed my teeth, it kind of triggered my gag reflex, and then I was way more likely to vomit, unfortunately. And of course I found that out the hard way, and I was brushing my teeth one night during this week and then I vomited. So it was very sad to like brush your teeth, have it all done, vomit, and then needing to brush your teeth again. I also wrote down in my notes that morning sickness feels like the nausea you get when you're hungover and trying not to vomit, or have food poisoning and trying not to vomit. I don't know if that paints a good picture for you guys, but it was like constant food poisoning or that awful yucky hangover feeling. I also wrote down some more things that make me vomit: having vitamins too late, drinking water before brushing teeth, not eating enough, or eating too much. I also went to the city that week to get my hair done, and after walking around the city I was having more cramps in my uterus. So I think my uterus was just a little bit more sensitive. I still contributed to the adenomyosis and just my uterus getting used to pregnancy. I also continued to feel my muscles were too relaxed at night, and not in the good way, like over relaxed, overstretched kind of thing. Muscles feeling even more relaxed at night, sometimes getting pins and needles, or my hips feel overstretched. I was also desperate for the morning sickness to start to go away, so I tested fate and I didn't have a anti-nausea tablet for one night of that week, just to see how I would be the next day and if I could maybe stop taking the nausea tablets, and hopefully keeping my fingers crossed if the nausea was getting any better. Okay, now we're on to week 11. So week 11, my nausea was starting to get a little bit better. I was able to go out to dinner twice in a row and lunch twice in a row. But I also wrote, after all the different kinds of foods, I woke up with very strong stomach pains in the night and vomited and had some diarrhea. Also during week 11, I was able to stop taking Maxilon. So I still felt kind of sick in the evenings, but it wasn't enough where I thought I would vomit. So I figured, let's stop taking Maxilon, hopefully my symptoms keep getting better from here on. I also started to feel very fatigued throughout the day, and I started having a lot of sneezing fits. I would sneeze like 10 to 20 times in a row. It was so strange, and that still happens randomly. I wrote that I also started to have some more pimples, just little ones, and mood swings of sadness. But I think I could also contribute that to just feeling so sick and nauseous for weeks on end. Like, I'm not sure if it's pregnancy related or situational. Okay, now we're on to week 12. So for 3 days of week 12, I had this really awful heartburn, and I thought, oh no, like, is this what my life is now? Like, the heartburn has started so early, but it went away. So just for 3 days, I had to have like Gaviscon, that stuff that sort of just helps your stomach acid not be so gross when it comes up, and that really helped for those 3 days. But whenever I lay down, it just felt like everything was coming up my esophagus. It was really gross. So I also wrote that on the 30th of November I felt a pop when I rolled over in the morning, and it felt like a kick to me. Now I'm not sure if you're supposed to feel anything this early, and I'm still not sure if that was like my little baby or not, but I think once I start to feel him moving around a lot more, then I'll know for certain if that really was a kick or not. It might just have been gas. During week 12, I still felt pretty sick in the evenings, but I continued not having my anti-nausea tablet because I didn't feel like I would actually vomit. So the nausea was getting better, but it wasn't perfect yet. So now I'm going to do the 2 bonus weeks. So this is week 13. I wrote, been feeling good, just still a little sick in the evenings. After my birthday, I was really tired on Monday, and I think that caused my nausea to be worse throughout the day. I ended up vomiting that night on the 6th of December. Which sucked, and it still holds true. Whenever I get really tired, I am more likely to be nauseous and vomit the next day. It even happened just recently this week. Basically, it's same old for week 13 and week 14. So in week 14, I had another bad day of nausea, but all around, most of the days was still getting better, just still worse in the evening. During week 14 as well, I started to feel a lot sadder. So a couple of weeks previous, I started to feel sad, but just since then on, like, this lingering sadness had continued, and I'm still not sure if that is contributed to being nauseous for so long, or if it's pregnancy hormones. So I think next time I see my doctor, I might bring that up if I'm continuing to feel these feelings. But yeah, you can kind of see why I would feel sad after being sick from like week 6 till now. Like, I'm still feeling nauseous, and that is a lot of weeks. That's almost, how many months would that be? That's like 2 months of feeling quite bad nausea, vomiting like almost every week, sometimes multiple times a week. So I can see why I feel sad. And the sadness isn't too bad, it's just like a low grade thing. But yeah, I'm not super worried about it at the moment, but I think I will bring it up to my doctor. Yeah, but that's it for my symptoms of my first trimester with my very first baby. I'm very excited to keep growing him, and I'm very excited for the nausea to finally go away. I'm not sure when it will. I've been told that now that I'm out of the first trimester, it should go away. So I'm really hoping that it will very soon. Leave down in the comments below, did your nausea go past the first trimester if you've ever been pregnant? If you didn't have any nausea, then you're a unicorn and I'm jealous of you. Yeah, I think that concludes everything for this video. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!